Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Dreams, Memes, and Veggie Supremes. Today we are on episode 5.
Yep, I got you.
I always get you to do that. I buggered up in episode 3?
Probably.
Was it? I don't know what episode it was, but I buggered up last time, so now I've got Jack for that. Now you may notice a few things. So the setup's a bit weird. We're quite close together. But yeah, we're compensating with the weird setup with new
awesome mics.
So that's it.
Do we sound nice? Leave a comment below.
I reckon we sound nice and crispy.
Don't do that.
We are talking about problems with vegetarianism. We've called this podcast Vegetarianism a half measure, ? Because we are...
That's what we think it is, pretty much. I'm pretty
well,
sure we're in agreement on that.
Spoiler alert, we think it's a half measure.
Yep.
So we're going to speak about that from a health, ethics, and environmental standpoint. But first, I think you know the drill by now.
Pizza time.
It's gonna be Toby Maguire's chance to have a say.
Pizza time.
We have got a spot today, a spot for you, called Gorilla Pizza.
Gorilla Pizza.
Formerly known as Godzilla Pizza, had to change their name because of a legal battle, I'm fairly sure.
Oh, was it?
Why would anyone even care if a pizza joint in Adelaide was named Godzilla Pizza? Just rubs me the wrong way. So they've rebranded as Gorilla Pizza. Luckily, they've still got really good pizza. So
vegan pizzas.
They've got a very good selection of vegan pizza.
So, which one do we have here, Benji?
So we've got the vegan cheeseburger.
Vegan cheeseburger pizza. Phone cam?
Yeah, I need to skip to the phone view. All right, so as you can see, it looks just ridiculous.
Mince, mustard, tomato sauce, pickle, onion.
So the lighting is quite terrible with this iPhone right now. But yeah, you can get me a close up there. So exactly what would go on a cheeseburger. Right, stop phone view.
Alright, would you like to do the honours?
Let's dive in. Let's see how this sounds on the new mics.
ASMR.
Well, it's going to have to be my highest rating yet, Jack.
You reckon?
I was incredibly impressed with that. 9.5.
I'd probably agree, but that's my second highest rating.
It is your second highest rating. Yeah. There was just the way it all worked together. I think was perfect. The cheese, the mustard tasted exactly like cheeseburger.
It does taste just like a cheeseburger.
Yeah. And that's the one thing. If it didn't taste like that, I would have not rated it at all. I would have rated it. The barbecue sauce
does really well for the cheeseburger taste.
It's so good. So the only thing that got me was the salt. It was a tiny bit too salty.
Okay. Yeah,
if the salt was there, I know it would be a 10. Gorilla Pizza, you did really well with that one.
Thanks, guys.
I think the way everything worked together with the mince, the cheese, the gherkins, the mustard made it.
The mustard is good. I think that's one of the things that really pulls it up.
Definitely. But yeah, for me, I think it was just the saltiness, and I think it's in the sauce that the saltiness is from. If they just made it less saltier, but I know that's me. I've got a fairly low tolerance to salt. And I know they always tailor it to people who are normal, who have a higher tolerance.
I think the crust could be slightly better. That's my only real thing with it.
Yeah,
just
true.
Very slightly better, and then that could be a 10.
Yeah, the base and the crust, yeah. I agree with you on that as well too, actually.
Nice.
Good job. And so now with the pizza out of the way, we'll jump into the topic of, ironically, vegetarianism. So we've adjusted the set a tiny bit. Should make it look a lot better now. It didn't look too good before, so that's okay. So jumping into vegetarianism, a half measure. So we're gonna first jump into, like Jack just said, health. Yep. So this is pretty much just going to be a distinction between health benefits that you see on a vegetarian diet versus health benefits that you see on a vegan diet, or just any general health implications.
So it's essentially a vegan diet plus what happens if you take a vegan diet and add in milk and eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that context, we didn't really cover that context, did we? Like a veg, yeah. So a vegan is just a step further. And if you're talking about food, yeah, it's elimination of eggs and milk. Honey as well, depending on what your stance is on that, because that is a bit of a moral grey area. But if you're thinking of the broader ethical implications, which is what we'll touch on later, there's more of a distinction there. I think with the health, it's pretty much just the implications of avoiding or including eggs and dairy, pretty much. Leave honey out of it. Honey, people consume in very little quantities. There's not much research.
Honey, you can have a free pass for this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's right.
Eggs and milk were coming for you.
We've spoke about the health implications of a vegan diet before, and we've mainly spoke about heart disease prevention and other chronic disease prevention, like diabetes and all the rest. So I'll be touching on that a bit. The main thing here is cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
It's the number one killer, so it's the most relevant in this discussion too, I think. Whenever you're having a conversation about health, I mean, if you're thinking about number of lives that you want to save in cardiovascular disease, by default you've got to include cardiovascular disease in that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's the number one killer on the planet, and it is a disease of affluence. So as you become more affluent, it is a disease that is correlated with that. That's mainly because we're consuming a lot more saturated fat than we ever did. Because that's, again, saturated fat is contained in animal products. We're consuming way more animal products than we ever have before. That's one of the main drivers of the current cardiovascular disease epidemic we're facing, is the consumption of saturated fat. That's not to say that there isn't plant sources too. Let me just touch on that really quickly. There's palm oil and coconut oil, both sources of saturated fat. Although they do have different compositions, the jury's still not out on that. What the problem is here is that with saturated fat, it's still present quite in large quantities in a vegetarian diet, because what will happen a lot of the time is vegetarians replace meat with more dairy, because they're like, I need to get my protein in, or more eggs. I need to get my protein in, or I'm just missing out on I'm missing out on meat. I'm going to need to replace it with this many grams of eggs, and I'm going to have to times my milk consumption by how much more. Which is just a fallacy. You don't need to do that. Yeah. Just focus on whole grains. Yeah. More legumes, more beans. And if vegetarians were doing that and were keeping their current consumption, their prior consumption of say milk and eggs, then they would see a significantly increased risk. But that doesn't happen. So it's the opposite. They'll replace these foods with just as much saturated fat as normal. And we can see that in the heart disease research and the cardiovascular disease prevention research. A lot of epidemiological studies will just show that vegetarians they're doing better than omnivores for the most part with heart disease prevention.
Why would that be?
Because they're still reducing it a bit.
Yeah,
it's still a bit, and they're reducing it a bit, but not as significantly as vegans say. But the thing is, when you add in, it's like a double whammy effect. I use that term all the time, because when you take out saturated fat, like animal products like eggs and dairy and say fatty meats, and you replace them with whole grains, which is what a lot of vegans do, and legumes and other things like that. So then you're getting the decreased risk of cardiovascular disease by eliminating those foods, but then you're also getting the cardioprotective effects of legumes and vegetables and whole grains and all what you include instead. That's why we see such a drastic difference in the risk factors for cardiovascular disease in vegans compared to omnivores. But vegetarians aren't really doing that. They're just replacing, for the most part, the same amount of saturated fat with animal products. And that's funny because that has implications in the other two topics we're going to be speaking about, the subtopics, which are environmental and ethics, because that's the same thing. The environmental impact's still a lot, or a fair amount, because you're just replacing those products with milk and eggs. And it's the same with the ethics. Like, you're not really doing that much better.
And even in the case that you keep your consumption of those things exactly the same, you'll still be at increased risks over if you cut them out completely. And that's the same for environmental and ethical.
The two things you kind of need to touch on there then with the other things. Just what are the negatives of consuming, or what's the net positive or negative of milk consumption, and what's the net positive or negative of egg consumption. And again, that's a lot of it's just centered around saturated fat, but there's also other things in there. So you've also got your cholesterol problem. So again, it's still being disputed what's happening with the cholesterol research. it's so conflicting because a lot of the new systematic literature reviews, which is like the gold standard, the gold standard of research, are showing that there's no association between cholesterol and the cholesterol in your blood, dietary cholesterol and cholesterol in your blood.
I've seen a bit of that.
Yeah, you've seen a bit of that, yeah. But it's so misleading because they don't measure the cholesterol at baseline, or they're already unhealthy populations that they're actually getting their baseline from.
Yeah.
And you have to understand with cholesterol research is the cholesterol in your blood follows a logarithmic function. So it will go up and then curve. And so it will go up drastically at the start and then curve off.
Yeah.
So if you're adding any more saturated fat, once you have a lot in your blood, it's not going to go up anymore. Yeah. And so that's the methods of the recent systematic literature reviews have been incredibly flawed. Whereas we've got this really cool metabolic ward review of 400 metabolic ward studies, which is crazy. It came out in the 1980s or 1990s. And this is another problem with critically thinking and reviewing research. But a lot of people would write that off because it's so old.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it is very, very quality. It's really quality research.
Yeah, it's well-designed study.
It's very well designed. Yeah, that's right. And it's metabolic ward study, which is very strong, especially 400 of them. And they were able to test this with a much better method, and they found the association. So I'm still not 100% sure. I'm confused for the most part as well on the cholesterol debate. It's just so much conflicting evidence.
Yeah.
I definitely do want to delve into the research more soon and get my nails into that. But I know the saturated fat, that's undisputable at the moment. That's the jury is out on that one, even though some people are still clinging on to the fact that it might be okay and that it doesn't increase your cholesterol. Don't know why.
Bacon for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Lose weight fast.
Yeah. But there is some problems with what vegans do wrong as well. I guess let's not be biased here. A lot of vegans won't replace the milk that they take out of their diet.
Yeah.
So what they'll do is they'll take out milk and any other calcium source, cheese, and they won't replace it with anything, no fortified milks. And if they do, they'll replace it with like organic, unfiltered almond milk or something ridiculous, and it has hippie juice. Or I make my own almond milk. It's got no calcium in. Like, make your own almond milk, but maybe buy a bag of calcium carbonate and chuck that in too. So they aren't replacing that calcium source with anything. And it goes with protein as well. There are a few, you can't be protein deficient, but for people especially who are looking to build muscle, they just won't add simply enough protein.
Yeah.
And you will also get a lot of, there's a big satiating effect of protein. So that helps weight loss. So the vegans who complain that they've actually gained weight, combination of a few things there, that might be one of them.
Yeah.
The fact that they're just not being smart about how they consume their macronutrients, because you've got fat, which is the least satiating, and it's also the highest caloric density.
Yeah.
So they could just be having vegan donuts or vegan fried whatever. So they aren't really replacing it with any quality protein sources that are going to make them feel full and for long as well. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that pretty much covers up the problems with the vegetarian, the health aspects. And that's the biggest one, is just they're replacing foods that are bad mainly because of their saturated fat content with other foods that are just pretty much as equally as high in saturated fat.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to environment now and the implications that a vegetarian diet as opposed to a vegan diet has.
Yeah. So I think that a lot fewer vegetarians go vegetarian for environment than the other two things.
Definitely.
I think most people who look into the environmental stuff will go straight to vegan if that's something that would change them to do that. But the other two are mainly the things that would drive someone to go vegetarian. But that doesn't mean this isn't a reason that they should just ignore, pretty much.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a really interesting point. I actually haven't thought of that before. Because there are environmentalists that adopt a vegan diet for the pure reason of just animal products being so detrimental to the environment.
Yeah.
But I could, like you said, I could never see a vegetarian actually going, hey, I'm going to become a vegetarian and for the environmental benefits. Yeah, that's something.
Which ones?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, so we've got some stats up. Yet again, we do planning for some of these podcasts, and
some of them,
some of them. A bit less planning for these ones. We're going to try and keep these shorter. Freestyling.
So if you were to feed one person for an entire year, the amount of land that you'd use for a vegetarian would end up being 3 times as much as that of a vegan. And given that a lot of, say, rainforest and land like that is mowed down more or less for that purpose, that's quite a significant fact.
Yeah, definitely. That is crazy, isn't it? You've got a fact there. So it takes 1/6 of an acre to feed a vegan for the whole entire year. That's pretty interesting. So it would be
pretty interesting.
it would be half an acre for a vegetarian then, which is a fair amount of land for one person if you think about it. Then you compare that to what's an omnivorous diet?
Much more.
So a meat eater would be using 3 acres.
3 acres altogether.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So still 6 times more than a vegetarian, but still a lot more than someone who's vegan.
Yeah, definitely. So you can pretty much reduce your environmental burden significantly by simply eliminating eggs and dairy. I mean, it's not too much of a big change.
I was going to say most of that comes down to cattle, because cattle are just so environmentally detrimental when they're farmed, just because of the amount of waste they produce, because of the amount of land they need, unless they're in a factory farm, which obviously we'll get into that a bit more when we get to ethics, but you can't really argue, oh no, it's fine for the environment if we chuck them in this little farm.
Yeah, that's right. I love, well, I hate it. I don't know why I say I love it. But if you try and go for more of the welfarist side, you end up being more of an environmental detriment. Yeah. But if you go towards the environmental side, you start being an ethical detriment. Yeah. You can't get away from it either way, other than taking the plunge and only eating plants.
Or ignoring it altogether, which is what a lot of people exposed to these issues seem to do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just ignoring
it's always the answer for anything like that.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's one thing to always acknowledge when it comes to animal products. Everyone's very familiar with the energy chain. Everyone's taught it in primary school, I would say. So the sun grows the plants are eaten by the animals, and then we're often told, we eat the animals and the plants. But the problem with that is, every time that energy goes down that chain, it becomes less. It becomes
an order of magnitude each time.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you've explained that much better than I was about to like skip around just then. Yeah, order of magnitude every time it gets worse, and so it's even worse if it was like a carnivorous animal. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah,
you're going down, which is like what's the fish that people eat that eats smaller fish? Is it tuna?
Yeah, tuna.
Tuna, yeah. So with that goes across the board. So as soon as you're not getting it from its form as a plant, you know instantly that it's going to be less energy efficient straight away, no matter what. Yeah. Nothing can 100% convert energy. Yeah. No animal, nothing. Not even eggs will do that. Even eggs, it's just not going to happen. It just doesn't make sense. Even in the physics of it, it just doesn't make sense. You can't put 100% of your energy into producing meat that is 100% energy efficient. I mean, you lab grown meat maybe, not even then, because you have to use quite a lot of energy input probably. I actually don't know too much about that. But the example being, we've got the stat here that's specifically relevant to vegetarians, is that 1,000 litres of water is required to produce 1 litre of milk. Now that's crazy. You don't, when you look on a shelf and you see a litre of cow's milk, you don't see gallons and gallons and gallons of water stacked up. You just see that one small little jug of milk, and the amount of resources that goes into that. Exactly. On the water alone. I mean, we're in a water crisis.
That's discounting stuff like food required to feed a dairy cow and the waste that they produce and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly right. It's crazy.
Land required.
So I think the main point there being that you can never ever get 100% sufficient energy efficient animal product even. So again, always going to the source, going to the plants is always going to be better. Even in terms of, even if you're talking about protein, you can grow 11 times more protein on the same amount of land than you can on a piece of the same amount of land with animal products. Yeah. Not sure if you knew that one, but that was
a really cool. Actually, that was quite interesting. Yeah. And it makes complete sense.
Of course it does. Yeah. Of course it does. I mean, but for the people that, where'd you get your protein? How are we going to feed everyone? No one's going to be able to get enough protein. You can grow 11 times more in the same amount of land. So
it's very interesting when we have a lot of people starving and in in poverty.
Yeah, I mean, this is not only just an environmental point. This is like almost like a humanitarian point too. Like, it's doing the best you can with this. I mean, just eliminating eggs and dairy has quite a significant humanitarian effect as well, because like the resources, yet again, from the environmental argument, using less resources, that's always just going to be a good thing. In general with humanitarian issues too. But yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't think about, I think.
Ethics.
The
juiciest part.
The juiciest of them all. So if you haven't watched our first podcast ever, which was on veganism and reason, then...
That will cover a lot of this stuff. We'll just be making it a lot more specific to vegetarianism.
So yeah, if you haven't watched that, definitely go back and watch that, because it's... The ethical framework that we set is very specific and is pretty bulletproof. I mean, if it wasn't bulletproof, we wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
So...
Bulletproof so far.
No
one's found any chinks in the armour from what I've found.
No. Yeah, that's right. So it definitely relates back to this, and you just put it through the argument systems that we have. So with the well-being one, and with the name the trait one, you just won't be able to get past it. So let's dive into those now. Delicious.
So the biggest issue we have is I would say almost most vegetarians would go vegetarian for the ethical side of it.
Yeah.
At least vegetarians I know. I don't know if that's actually statistically
No, I would
correct.
say so, yeah.
But and they do that because meat involves killing, whereas milk and eggs can be taken without killing the animal. And, that sounds like a fairly consistent point. You don't want an animal to die, so you don't do the things that make things die.
Yeah.
But when you really look into the practices, that's when that belief kind of can crumble very quickly.
Yeah, exactly right. That's a lot of things that vegetarians will do, is they'll just think about it in their heads. I think I mentioned this to you before. They'll just think about it like, how's my meat made? Oh, an animal has to die. Oh, I don't want to do that. I'll cut out meat. I'll cut out fish, whatever. They don't think about the dairy and the egg side, because they just haven't been exposed to it. Well, at least I try and believe that. I try and believe that they just haven't been exposed to it yet. So I always try and give them the benefit of the doubt, and assuming that they're just ignorant to these things.
Well, the three options really are that they're ignorant to it, they don't care at all, or they're just purposely ignoring it. And the second two are very, very bleak.
Yeah.
And makes it seem like a lot less of an ethical choice to be vegetarian, and more,
at least not
more of a half measure.
So yeah, it's a half measure because it's not ethically consistent. It's logically consistent, even or ethically consistent. But first and foremost, it's not even logically consistent. So, and that's always
say consistent one more time.
Consistent.
Thank you.
So definitely getting into some area now that's not really nice to speak about. It's what happens in these industries. So for the vegetarians that are watching who don't know, but just give you a very brief breakdown. I know
it's not nice to speak about, but it's important to be aware of. That's how I describe this kind of thing. Definitely.
And there's much better videos out on these specific issues, eggs and dairy production, than us. I know Erin Janus has got some pretty hard-hitting stuff that she's uploaded. That's very she does it in a good way. It's
Animals Australia's got some good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So there's a lot of other videos. So you can just simply do a Google search and find that. But with eggs, we're starting with eggs. So if you don't think killing's involved, you've got the male chicks. What happens to those? They can't lay eggs. So often in the egg industry, they're killed immediately after birth. So within a day, I think even 2 days, they can be grinded in a grinder, and they can also be gassed in a big bag, or even just thrown out to die. I've seen videos where they put in big dumpster trucks and they're just left there. So they're just constantly climbing the walls until they can't anymore, and they die. So that's what happens to the male chicks in the industry. And then with the female chicks, I mean, they're not kept in very, very often. I mean, we're talking like 98% here, maybe even more, kept in terrible conditions. And even when it's cage-free, they're just put into the same space with no cages. So they're actually just rubbing up against each other. And it's actually debatably worse because of the behavioural...
The interactions that
the
that
behavioural
kind
interactions,
of thing will create.
Yeah, pecking at each other pecking each other's eyes out and stuff. So debatably it's worse. And then you've got free range. I mean, this is where it starts to get morally grey, because I think we both agree on this point that if you've got, depending on where you've got that chicken from, say if this is the best case scenario, in a scenario that I would be okay in eating eggs with, ethics alone, let me just make that clear. I would be fine with eating eggs if it was a backyard hen, it was a rescued hen from like a battery
farm hen.
Yeah. And it was rescued and it was still producing eggs, and it had no interest in eating its own eggs, because actually chickens eat their own eggs a lot of the time because they lose a lot of nutrients through laying an egg.
Yeah.
Because of the selective breeding.
Artificial selection.
Yeah. That's been done to make them produce an egg every day.
Yeah.
So they lose a lot more nutrients than they normally would. I think it used to be like an egg every 3 days. Now it's like an egg every day.
Like that.
Yeah.
In periods of high feeding.
Yeah, that's right. Even in periods of high feeding. That's crazy. So that would be the only instance I would actually be okay with the ethics side of it. I wouldn't personally do it still, because like it's gross.
Yeah, my only argument then would be that it's a bit gross.
Yeah, but which isn't a good argument.
No, that's why that's when we'd be okay with other people doing it. Because at that point, if you don't find it gross, do it. If you do find it gross, don't do it.
Yeah, I would have no judgment unless it was my partner and I had to kiss her. I'd be like, maybe just half a day. Whereas I can't really say the same. I can't really think of any ethical scenario in which dairy would be.
Yeah.
In case, unless it was some freak weird scenario in which it would never happen, because I know a lot of people who are in that scenario with the eggs. But yeah, with the dairy, what happens yet again? The males aren't of use to the industry. They can't produce milk, so they have to be killed as veal
or given to a dirt cheap slaughterhouse to be raised,
fattened up. Yeah.
Or
even worse, they use as mating cows as well. That's a lot of people that don't think about, is they use as mating cows, and that's a
small percentage.
A very small percentage. Yeah, veal, or they're fattened up and then they're killed. So you're still supporting the slaughter of those bobby calves, or when they get older. And then also you've got the treatment, obviously, of the female cows. Newsflash: female cows don't produce milk 24/7. They can only produce milk when they have a baby. So that means they have to be forcefully impregnated.
Like every other mammal.
Yeah, I don't know why everyone thinks that.
It's just you're raised to believe so, I guess.
Yeah.
Like we only really figured that out when we first started looking into it.
I mean, I didn't think they did it 24/7. I was just kind of
I didn't think it at all.
Yeah, I just didn't think it. Yeah, that's right. I didn't just think it. I was like, oh yeah. I didn't actually go like they produce milk 24/7. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but then as soon as someone brings up the point, oh well, doesn't every other mammal only produce milk when they're pregnant or have a baby? You go, that makes sense. Why would the cow be an exception?
Yeah, it's funny.
Especially when none of its relatives do that or anything like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, and so. Yet again, the conditions that they're usually kept in while they're being milked and impregnated and going through that cycle. I think they go through about 4 cycles. I'm not sure if you can fact check for me. 4 cycles, but before they die, usually. And I think they're about 6 years old then.
Yeah.
And they're called spent dairy cows. And spent dairy cows get sent to same slaughterhouse, yeah. So they get killed, and that's usually for cheap meat, burgers and all the rest. So yeah, that they have possibly the worst lives of any conscious being, any sentient being on the planet.
Yeah, I would argue that drinking milk would probably in most cases be worse than eating meat, because you are essentially eating meat still, or contributing to that whilst doing this extra horrific thing.
I mean, you throw the torture in there too, and then you've got dairy pretty much. So simple one's actually disgusting to even search up, but search up artificial insemination of a dairy cow. Straight away you'll be thinking, okay, when I can just eat vegetables, why is this even an option?
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into those arguments where people say drinking cow's milk is unnatural. That's a naturalistic fallacy. I'm not going to make that.
Yeah.
But it's weird.
Yeah.
it's. I mean, you just have to think about it. Drinking the milk of a female cow when you'd never do it with a human woman.
No,
which would technically be more normal.
If you're an adult, you wouldn't even drink your mother's milk. You wouldn't drink another woman's milk. You wouldn't drink a dog's milk. You wouldn't drink a giraffe's milk.
Yeah.
Why is the cow the special exception?
I know, it's so weird. It's definitely a point to make, just highlight how weird it is, because I know that's a point that resonates with a lot of people. It certainly resonated with me, but I know for more of the logically nuanced kind of people, it won't really work for them, because they'll just see that as a naturalistic fallacy, which is completely fine. But yeah, then you just have to consider the ethics of it, and you can't get around that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't really think of anything else in there, but it's not a good life for anyone who's involved in those industries. So if you can reduce that suffering, then that's a choice that you should be morally obliged to do.
Yeah.
So,
and you will always get the argument in return that, but I only buy milk from old MacDonald up the road who spends all his days patting his cow and giving it extra food, and it lives the best life possible. And even if you could argue that isn't 99% of the cases.
Yeah.
That's the tiniest percentage. Even if that is the optimal situation, that is not the most common situation.
And even then, just ask old MacDonald where he sends these bobby calves. So we're going to get into AMAs. So the first AMA we got through was
social consequences of going vegan as opposed to vegetarian.
What does he mean by that?
So I imagine it means that if someone's going to go vegan, that's a much more drastic change than if you were to go vegetarian. It's a lot. I would probably quite easily admit it's easier to be vegetarian than it is to go vegan, considering I've done both.
Yeah, definitely. And I think worldwide it is. Like, you've only got to consider India. Massive vegetarian population, 30% of the country, I'm fairly sure. But the amount of milk that they use is incredibly high. Like, they have it in a lot of dishes. Even to be vegan, I might even make the argument that it might be even quite hard in India.
Yeah.
Even though 30% of the population is vegetarian. So that's a very good point. But only as a result of social stigma, which is constantly being degraded. Each year I feel as though it gets better. I think the protein myth now for vegans is pretty much gone. And a lot of other myths along with it have gone. And I think that's what's been holding it back. So I think now the social stigma is now almost flipping.
Yeah.
I feel as though soon the proportion of vegans of the population will be higher than vegetarians.
And every single day it becomes easier to be vegan, I think. We just had we just had a cheeseburger pizza that's vegan.
That's ridiculous.
That's just down the road. That's a local shop. Hungry Jack's, which is one of the biggest burger places in Australia, just released a vegan burger, vegan cheese, vegan mayo. Probably only a matter of time until somewhere like Macca's follows suit. And I'm not saying this is the food you should be putting as a staple, but this is the kind of thing that you always have available to you.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Go to the supermarket, you've got all these vegan options now that even just a few years ago you didn't have. It's crazy to see the progress.
Yeah, definitely. It's easier now than it has ever been. And
it will continue to be easier and easier, I think.
Yeah. I mean, if you're living in Australia right now and watching this, I mean, there's no excuse food-wise, whether it comes in enjoyability, accessibility, anything like that, unless you're in like the rural areas of Australia, that you can have that excuse. You can't have that excuse at all. You have to look at the growth in cuisine in Australia, and worldwide even. Vegan is the fastest growing cuisine in Australia. Well, I mean, has anyone even heard of vegetarian cuisine at the moment? Like, is that even a thing?
That?
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't put a name on, but if you say vegan cuisine, that everyone will know what that is.
Give me 1 sec.
So my dad, who's a food sales manager for one of the biggest food distribution companies in South Australia, in Australia, he's also cited this fact, and he sees it firsthand. So a bit of anecdotal evidence there. A lot of cafes and a lot of restaurants are getting very interested in buying these products. These so-called vegan products.
So just listing off a few statistics here. The market for vegan commodities has increased in conjunction with the explosion of interest, with China's vegan market being the fastest growing, which has been predicted to rise by 17% between 2015 and 2020, followed by the United Arab Emirates at 10.6%, and then Australia coming in third at 9.6%. Which
I didn't even think UAE would be on there.
Yeah, second fastest growing, which is pretty crazy rate of growth as well. If you just take the time to compare that to other markets,
and the sheer growth of people who are now label themselves as vegan is growing, and yeah, like I said, I think it's going to overtake vegetarian in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I would say so.
In first world countries anyway.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen in India, but yeah,
anytime soon at least.
Yeah, hopefully. But the other AMA, the other one we got, which is from Michael. Shout outs to Michael. Is dairy really a calcium leach? Now, this is a really good question, because this is actually a myth that's commonly cited in the vegan community.
Didn't cover in our Nutrition Mythbusters.
No, didn't cover it in that, and didn't cover it just then when we spoke about health, because I knew this was going to be coming up. So this is the acid ash hypothesis. This is very much intertwined with the acidic myth that we covered. They say that milk needs to be neutralized in the body, so it takes calcium from your bones to neutralize the acid load that dairy causes, and it's complete pseudoscience. It doesn't happen. So yeah, if you search it up, it's the acid ash hypothesis. It's been disputed a lot of times. It was just always a hypothesis anyway, and it's been disputed.
But people seem to latch onto it because
they leech onto it. But really, really interesting, and it's confusing me, is that the most recent systematic literature review on just calcium intake and bone mineral density. So I don't think he even specified where the calcium came from. It was just literally calcium intake and bone mineral density, which is like the best marker, I'd say, for measuring bone health. And they found no correlation between calcium intake and bone mineral density. I think we're going to see some very interesting research coming out soon, in the next 2 to 5 years maybe, about calcium and bone mineral. Is
calcium a waste of time?
Leave your comments below.
In the 5-star reviews on iTunes, please.
But yeah, we might find some crazy research to see that we only need a tiny bit of calcium. We actually need more vitamin D, which is something that's becoming increasingly prevalent in the literature, is the importance of vitamin D for bone health rather than calcium. And this is because vitamin D actually transports calcium around in the body. So if you don't have enough vitamin D and you have calcium, you're not going to really be doing too much. Yeah. So, but you never know. We might see some changes in recommendations or all the rest. So yeah, that's a really interesting question. Thanks, Michael, for that.
Thanks, Michael.
I'm sorry if I can't give you the best eloquent response as to why the acid ash hypothesis isn't correct, but it's just been rejected in the scientific consensus. So I reckon we're going to wrap it up there, guys. That's all about AMAs out of the way. We've covered health, environment, and ethics quite briefly.
Nothing you want to add on at all? I'm pretty happy with
leaving it there.
That?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
We could definitely we had a podcast on each individual one of those. There's so much to cover, but I feel as though we've touched on the most important bits.
Yeah.
Yeah. In short, our opinion is that vegetarianism is a half measure, and that if you were logically consistent in all areas that we've spoken about, health, ethics, and environment, then you'd be a vegan.
One thing I will add, actually, you just reminded me of it by saying half measure, is the only real good use of vegetarianism, in my opinion, I imagine you have the same opinion, is as a stepping stone. Because it can be quite hard to go cold turkey vegan overnight.
Yeah, that's a really important thing.
You have no knowledge of what foods to have and how to cook without meat, how to get your protein, stuff like that. So it's good it can be good for some people to go vegan, cut out certain meats, vegetarian, cut out dairy or eggs, and then go straight from there.
Yeah, completely agree. I would only add to that and just say I actually recommend it. I'd actually recommend it as a stepping stone.
Probably more sustainable.
Yeah,
so if you just go vegan overnight, you're like, I don't know what to eat. I can't eat any of my favourite foods.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you don't give it the time, more or less.
Yeah, you don't give it any time, and you'll just be like, I'm not trying that again. And not only will you jump off the bandwagon quicker, you might not ever get on it again.
You'll be reluctant to go back on because you've already tried it.
Yeah,
you're just like, no, it didn't work for me.
Yeah. Whereas if you fell off it while you're in vegetarianism, you'd be like, oh yeah, I was on my way there, but I just had a bit of trouble. I'll get back on it again. Or that probably won't even happen anyway, because it'll just be so easy to go vegetarian first, and then just the next step is yet again so much easier. Whereas taking that leap almost to vegan, because it is a big dietary change, and there is quite a lot to think about. I'm not denying that. I'm not going to glorify the vegan diet with its ease, because it's easy now, but not at the start.
Tough when you start.
Yeah,
I feel like give it a few months and everything becomes a lot easier.
Definitely.
I think we've both had experiences where we forget sometimes that other people aren't vegan.
Yeah,
I've gone to a shop and be like, oh, I'll grab those biscuits. Oh, wait a second, milk chocolate.
Yeah,
forgot that existed.
Yeah, it's quite funny because sometimes you just lose that total grasp that we don't live in we live in a world where 99% of people are omnivorous. So it can be really introspective sometimes. To think about that, depressing as well. So
very depressing. And on that note,
we'll wrap it up there. See you guys. Thank you for watching again. Make sure you tune in for the next podcast, which is about digital health, Instagram booties, and mental health. Thank you for watching, guys.
Bye.
Peace.